Great, excellent. So I'm going to ask them just to give a quick 1 minute introduction from themselves, and I'll start with Rob. Rob used to be the manager of Linkin Park, and as you heard earlier, Jim talk about Rob and his role during that period. So, Rob, tell us what you're up to at the moment.
Hi, I'm Rob McDermott. I have a company called Mad Mac Entertainment. I've been doing this probably about 25 years. Funny to say that, but you know, I've managed all types of bands. I started out in the hard rock world, starting with bands Pantera, White Zombie, if you ever heard of those bands, and you know, then went into managing Linkin Park. But I've worked at companies like The Firm, which was doing everyone from Backstreet Boys to Limp Bizkit to Enrique Iglesias to a place called The Collective, which had Avenged Sevenfold and All American Rejects. So all different types of acts that I've kind of worked alongside with, if not directly with, throughout that time. So that's probably the best way to catch up. I currently have I currently work with about 3 bands, and then I consult and I'm building an artist development company right now.
Chris, I was going to give you 1 minute and run a clock, because in studios everyone's looking at the clock, but I do believe that in Karma Studios there are no clocks.
Correct. There's no clocks because we're the studio that never sleeps, and people can work around that clock. Yeah.
So Chris, let's talk. I love your story, and I know it very well, but just a little bit about, I mean, I know you covered some of your story obviously earlier, but anything you didn't cover earlier, you can cover now.
Yeah, okay, so quick 1 minute précis is I started out life as a clarinet and sax player, playing in the London Symphony Orchestra for 6 years, then moved over to being a record producer, having taken a 6-month sabbatical and hung out at Abbey Road Studios and just checked out what was going on there, learned a load. I'm the oldest one on the panel, I think, now, and I've produced 400 records, and so from the classical genre, jazz, alternative pop, mainstream pop, and in the last 3 or 4 years I've been working on a lot of Hollywood film soundtracks, most notably with Hans Zimmer. In the middle of that I started working with the King of Thailand, who sadly passed away 1 year ago, and made 11 albums of his music. So that's what brought me to the region, and I then ended up working with pop acts in Thailand and within Southeast Asia. Yeah. And then I founded Karma Sound Studios, so I hang out here sort of about 7 months of the year.
And he's only 35 years of age.
Yeah.
And that makes Javier...
But I don't sleep, so I've managed to get...
That's true, that's true.
20 hours in a day, yeah.
Javier, we didn't get a chance to really talk about your introduction on you. I know you've worked with various people. Maybe just a...
Yeah, basically, in a nutshell, I've been a musician since I've been 13 years old, so I have about 29 years worth of experience. I had a band in South America for 11 years, and then I relocated to the UK in London, where I did sound engineering studies as well and production. I ended up back in another band in Stereophonics for about 9 years as a member, and the last 4 years or so I've just been dedicated as a designer of music, not only for musicians as a producer, but also with brands and films. Yeah, just do a plethora array of different works where music is used for a particular use, and design the music for that. But yeah, thrive on working with musicians and still tour as well.
Your gig with the Stereophonics was because you were working in a studio?
Correct, yeah. I was the T-boy, yeah.
The T-boy?
I did pretty good sandwiches, I think.
Yeah? I'll get you to make me a cup of tea later, see if I can do that. So,
I still got it.
Yeah, that's right. You still got it. First of all, the impact of technology on the music industry, we can go on about Spotify, Apple Music, streaming and all that sort of thing, but let's look about the music making and the impact that it's had on how the artist thinks about how music's created, and how you feel towards that comment regarding the way artists approach technology. How many of you guys are recording in your bedroom? Yeah, quite a few, which is great, which is fantastic. But can you give me your views, and let's start with you, Javier, sort of the positives and negatives of how technology has affected the role of the producer?
Well, I think I've done them all, actually. I went through a very traditional phase where you had to go to a big studio with a record producer or engineer to actually be able just record something. I also been able to record solo projects on a bedroom or in a hotel room while I was on tour with the Stereophonics as well. One thing I perhaps did realize is that you have to start from a really core idea of what do you want to do, and keep in mind that technology is there to help you, but not be the one driving you. It's great to be and have it as a tool, but it's important to keep in mind that perhaps you can use it, but you always have something that is important that you have to say. As long as you have that, you can either record in a massive studio or in a small studio. The important thing is just to have a clear idea who you are as an artist.
Chris, technology for you.
Yeah, a quick story then related to this. There's no barrier to entry other than the money for a laptop and a cheap copy of Logic, which is $100 and something. It's pretty accessible. So I was on tour with Hans Zimmer, and in the band was Mike Einziger, the guitarist from Incubus. His wife is a really great violinist. Skrillex needed some strings on a track. They had no gear with them other than Pro Tools on a MacBook Pro. No mic, no interface, nothing. It was just straight in. They used the microphone of the laptop. We had 15 tracks of violin, just recorded straight into the laptop, mixed in Pro Tools, straight out to Skrillex. It was released a month later.
If that was in the studio, it would have taken a lot longer than you just saying.
A lot longer and cost probably $20,000. Yeah. So no barrier to entry really with technology, but the way that worked really well was that Mike's a consummate pro, very, very experienced, probably 10 albums in, and was a great arbiter of his own work. And we were talking earlier that without a producer and you're just working in your bedroom, you've got no second pair of ears or no viewpoints. And I'm sure Rob can talk a bit further.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, you want me to? No. Of
course I do, mate.
No. I mean, technology has obviously done an amazing thing, but the purity of being an artist has to always remain intact. It's almost like what you were saying. You know, every time, they're able to do that. 15 tracks in a microphone still sound amazing, get it all mixed down. It's because the perfection of the performance more than anything. Technology can't hide a crappy performance. Let's just call that, because that's the real truth of it. But I think technology has been an amazing thing to be able to do that in your bedroom, But the fear of that is not having that third-party person to say that was crap. Do it again. That was crap.
We talked earlier about a few specific examples of people who have done songs in the bedroom and recorded vocals, which you can do with a great mic and a great interface. You can be there, but if you don't have somebody there encouraging you and coaching you through the way that it's coming across emotionally, it can be a very lame experience listening back, and it requires somebody else to tell you that normally.
Rob, I completely agree with you. I've worked with a bunch of Indonesian artists, and the singer wouldn't record with the producer. So they would do their own vocal performance on their own without the producer. So the role of the producer to get a great vocal performance, not just set up the microphone, because that's not what he's there for. And again, it goes back to what you said about having other ears.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it can be your best friend. It can be someone that's very knowledgeable. You prefer it to be a producer. You prefer it to be someone who has way more experience than you. But when you have that, you have to be able to listen to them and go through it. I'm totally fine if someone wants to self-produce their music ultimately, but any artist that I represent, you better be ready for me to tell you, I hate that. That's horrible. Do it again. Your vocals sound flat. You sound like you're not even have any emotion in that. Because that's the biggest thing that I've found through the years is, even with a producer, I find that sometimes artists will hear something a different way than what they're saying, and then not have that other person, albeit your manager or producer or someone, to go, you're not really putting the right inflection in that. You're not really emoting that lyric. You wrote this amazing lyric, this real heartfelt lyric, and you just sound like a robot singing it. And that's the biggest problem, I think.
And quite often people will record a vocal and their perception in their head is very different from what comes out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
No. That was the right one.
It's more about you than it is about me, Rob. So, I think you talk about performance, and we're talking about the artist's performance. And I was very fortunate to go to the Pink Floyd exhibition 2 weeks ago, which is in London. And there was a video clip of Roger Waters talking about how a mix was a kind of performance in its own right back in the day, and how that's sort of gone now, because obviously there's a lot of technology and those sort of things. Javier, I mean, obviously you go back quite a way as well, and technology.
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, yes. So you're 1 year younger than Chris.
I've done records where there wasn't automation at all, and literally the whole band was on the board doing the pannings and the effects sent to the delay and all the stuff. And I think what is really nice to capture from that era, I think, is the fact of committing to something. The same thing when you were recording straight to tape. You had a limitation on how many channels you were doing. And I think as an artist, it's really important to develop that. And sometimes a producer really can bring that to the table, not only because they could have a fresh set of ears, but they can also have the vision or the experience of having gone through that. And or having an objective opinion on just the performance you done, because perhaps they can see, you can play better, you can actually rise it from where it is there.
Chris, I mean, you've got an amazing technology at Karma. It's just mind-blowing, and it's great to see. But that art form of mixing and the performance in the room, I mean, again, have we lost it?
Well, obviously, I set up a facility actually that encompasses all of these scenarios. So in our Studio One, we're fully spec'd up with an amazing desk and everything you could ever need technologically. But we also have a fourth studio now, which is a bedroom studio. But it's in a lovely environment here in Thailand, So, but we've got everything in between. And so we can provide whatever anybody needs, and it's vital. And all of the most successful records, bar about one or two, have come out of using the most technology and having more people around and a great producer and a great engineer and a great mix. Javier's point about people not committing and just prevaricating and, I can come back to it and I'll change that later and you never get a performance that way. But when you've got more people in the room and you are going to perform and the producer's there getting it, it's like you've got an audience, and it's very different doing that on your own at home. And the other thing that I find with inexperienced singer-songwriters mixing their own tracks is the vocals always too quiet, because they're just slightly reticent. If it wasn't perfect, then they just bury it slightly.
If you can't hear what they're saying, then, that's the other thing. I mean, its pronunciation is one thing, but the performance, so that it's there.
Having an experienced producer, someone like Steve, who really brings out the best in you and encourages you and shouts at you and gets emotion going, is the thing that can make a killer performance that will cut it.
And
go ahead, Javier.
One quick thing as well, which is perhaps quite important to define, is actually what is a producer, or what does a producer do, and it was one of those titles that a lot of people know what it is, and which we all do, but at the same time, it could be many things. And I think it's very important to find the right producer for the right artist, and have that match is very important, because a lot of artists, when we are young, we tend to go like, I want to work with that guy because he did this and this record, but he's actually probably not the right fit for you. Perhaps the local producer has been working with you, the tracks in and out for you for the last 5 years. That's the guy that knows you best. And that's the guy that's going to put all the effort to make that sound amazing. So it's very important for any artist to look for the right producer that could provide that for that person. Because a producer, it eventually is like a coach in a way. It's guiding that person throughout the whole process.
It's a very broad spectrum of things that a producer can provide. I've produced records, I use the term loosely, where I've done very, very little other than create an environment in which people can do their very best work. And then just given what I think may be the right helpful comments or questions to them to get them thinking, to make them come out of themselves,
Rob, I mean, the relationship between a manager and a producer, obviously when it comes to selecting a producer, I mean, you must get bands now or bands you've had in the past saying, we want Jeff Blue or we want this, that sort of thing. So the choice of a producer, is that something that you are, as a manager, very gamefully involved in the decision-making process, engaging the producer, the financial relationship? I mean, I know that the record label has a big part to play, but does the manager get involved in that, and have you got involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, on that level, it all depends on the level of money being spent, right? Sometimes I'll hide behind the record label when it comes to money. It's their choice, not mine. But a lot of the times, you sit down, you go through the process, you say, okay, tell us your favorite records. Who made? It's really kind of a simple process. Who are your top 10 records? Who made those records? What do you like about them? What don't you like about them? And then you'll try to find three or four producers. Sometimes it's less, but usually 3 or 4 producers. I'll have them go meet with them or talk them on the phone, get a vibe, see if they can kind of figure out what ticks, and can that be, you said it great, can that be a great coach? Is that a coach? Is that someone that's going to be honest with them? Is that someone that's just, there's a lot of producers that are just engineers, right? That's happened in the past with me too. But the artist needed it, didn't need it, it all depended. And sometimes I was really upset with what was coming out of it because of the way that they were making the record. And they weren't as involved, and they weren't sitting there. I remember one time I was walking into, I have an artist called From Ashes to New, and I went in there, and they'd done this song, and I turned to the singer, and I go, he laid it for me. He goes, "Did you really like that?" I love my performance. I go, "Your vocal performance sucks." I go, I listened to the lyrics, play it back. Is it about that? Yeah. Well, then why don't you have that? And I turn to the producer and say, why haven't you caught that? Like, I walked in the room right off the street, heard that, and I called that, and you're the one getting paid to call that out and make that fix. And so, you've got to really pay attention to what you really want out of a record and what people can hear. Because again, when you're in your own music, you don't really hear it the way that someone else does. It's the reason why some people make these songs, full songs, and put them out there and go, why doesn't anyone like them? It's like, well, there's a lot of problems to them that no one told you along the way, So that's what and then so I go through that. That's the type of mentality process. Or a guy like, Rick Rubin, who's, you meet with him, he's just more like a guru. He has about 3 or 4, he works on 3 or 4 different projects, but he comes in, he gives a whole mental idea of what the band wants to achieve, gets them really into a zone, and then sends them on their way to make their record, and then he comes back, spends 3 or 4 days writing notes on all the songs that you've written.
I mean, that's such a good point. For me, it's characters, really. And so Rick, on one month, will be doing Neil Diamond, and the next it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they're diametrically opposite musically, but it's the guy that can get the performance out of the artist.
Because of the way that he can really get them to think, right? It's a thought process. It's an idea. Execution comes behind that thought process. At least that's what I believe. And, and then so we go through, we pick these producers, and we go in there. But again, it's at the level that a lot of artists are now, whether they're making it in their bedroom or stuff like that, you may not even need that physical person in the room when you're just starting out doing the demos, but you need that trusted source somewhere near you that can tell you, is this really good? You could be the closest thing to a producer that I know around here. Please tell me what's right and what's wrong with this. And I think that's a lot of what you can do at that small level.
Javier, with regards to the people you've worked with, I mean, more recently toured with Phil Manzanera, and have you been involved in the recording with Phil?
Yeah, pretty much. I have few good stories actually. For instance, I was involved doing a few records with him, but for those who don't know him, he's the guitar player from Roxy Music. But just to give you an idea of how good a producer can be, he's actually the one that made the last Pink Floyd record happen. And he's actually the one that had the vision about the record. David approached him with a bunch of recordings, and all of that was taken by Phil, and sat down and actually gave them an order and made some sense out of them, and finally presented that back to Nick and David. And they took a year to get around to the idea that, yes, we have an album. And it was fantastic to see that process throughout and actually see him orchestrating or putting all the pieces together of an album. So it's remarkable to see people like that work as well. Even though as well when I worked with Jeff Emerick, I mean, he did the Sgt. Pepper's, and I was so thrilled and honored to work with him to do a documentary for the BBC, and they wanted each band to play all the songs again. And the whole premise of that was actually, well, we have to do it with the same equipment, and we're doing exactly the same mics that we're going to recreate the album. And that level of commitment to actually play live as a band. My drums were like 4 mics going into one channel, and we did everything live. Drums, bass, guitars, and lead vocal. The next overdub was percussion with backing vocals at the same time, and the next overdub was a lead guitar. That's it, done. So I think it's remarkable to work with producers which have different approaches as well. I mean, some of them are more engineering driven, other ones are completely take the back seat and they just grab that special vibe from the artist and make them convene into this special force that then gets captured. So stuff like that is amazing to see. And the only way to experience that is to work with producers, and they're going to bring that only if you work with them, basically.
Well, talking about someone who's different, Hans Zimmer, what an experience, Chris. I mean, working with someone like Hans.
Yeah, that's a major experience, and this is someone who's technologically very, very competent as well as a great creator and writer. But Hans will be the first one to admit that he needs a producer as well. He would never self-produce. He always hands over. He always trusts us, and he trusts his mix engineers implicitly, and rarely gets involved until the very final stages of real fine-tuning, because there's been an element of trust over a long period of time that's built up, and we know aesthetically what he's after. But on that one, in a way, actually, Christopher Nolan is also pretty proactive sonically in what we do as well. So that's been an amazing experience for me. One thing I'd say, just going back to what the guys are saying, if you're working in your own circumstances, because that's more common here, isn't it, than in the big studios, is if you can possibly afford it or cajole somebody into working with you to mix for you, because you may have tracked everything, but somebody can come in with a completely different approach and mix and draw more out of the song than you may think possible. People like Michael Brower, for example, get delivered Coldplay tracks, and he then mixes it, and they let him loose to do it. And he'll often bring out something really extraordinary in the track that they weren't quite conceiving in a particular way. So, that's another element to the whole process, which can be very interesting if somebody else is the third party working for you.
A manager invests all the time in an artist. Studios get paid, producers get paid, but a lot of the time you guys are investing as well. I mean, Chris, you don't just take your money and run. There's times when you really do.
Yeah, I mean, there were two things you just said. That studios get paid and producers get paid. Often I provide studio facilities for nothing.
Exactly.
Often I don't get paid. I'll do things on spec if I think there's a long-term relationship to be made.
There'll be a queue.
Yeah.
By the way,
there's a long waiting list.
They've got to be good, though, haven't they?
No, they've got to be absolutely outstanding. Yeah. They don't come to me at the... I'll give help and encouragement and advice at any stage, but if you want studio time and to get involved, then come prepared. Come with something great that you've already written. No matter what shape that's in, we can help make it in great shape. But too many people expect that they're going to be Beyonce next week because they think they can sing like her. And actually, I don't see Beyonce making records in her bedroom recently either.
No.
So, these are people who are consummate artists who take their artistry with such a degree of seriousness you would not believe. They work with the best people in the best circumstances. And so, yes, they've got it on a plate, but it comes from the core, and they get themselves right first.
Javier, I mean, there's sometimes you hear an artist, you go, I just got to work with them. And you'll bend over to do that. I mean, that's happened. I mean, working with Shush at the moment and Zach, I know that's more on a performance point of view, but there's times when artists come along and you actually feel that way as well, yeah?
No, absolutely. I think we're all of us, including you guys, we're all music lovers, and I think that's the first thing that comes into our mind. And you do go through all the stages when you get like really cocky and think, oh, yeah, I'm the best drummer in the world, the best man in the world. Then you realize you're not. And then, yeah, you go through all the peaks, highs and lows and everything. But then with maturity and time, you start realizing, or remembering why you started making music in the first place. And I think it's that connection. And often you do hear bands that they present you a piece of work that you go like, wow, that's amazing. And you truly don't care. I do it for free, or if I have time, I do. And I think that's the beauty of it, because you truly believe that other person could actually achieve something, and hopefully they will.
Rob, you must get sent lots of demos and links and stuff as well from new artists. And you help them out as well. When you first came to Music Matters in 2011, I think I introduced you to so many people that you're like, yeah, I can talk to this guy. No problem. I'm the manager of Linkin Park, but who cares, And you invest in young talent and new artists.
You have to. Somebody has to be there to give an opinion to these people. Everyone out there, you are all out there making art the way that you feel you know how. And there's a whole bunch of people that you're trying to get through to get to an audience. And you're hoping that you can get the right opinions for those people because they have to now help you move forward to get to that audience. And there's no other reason why I got into this industry other than to do that, other than to make an artist's vision come through and to kind of help be that. I didn't even know I was that person. All I knew is that whenever I heard a great band, I couldn't wait but tell all my friends about it. I was that kid as a teenager. You know, I was that as I got older, and it just kind of morphed into being able to kind of develop some skills to help people. You know, I love sitting in a studio and talking to people about what they're trying to create behind the music that they're making. You know, what is it that you're trying to get out there? And usually you find out that an artist can get cajoled into something totally different by a producer than what is in their head. But they're just like, oh, they know better than me, I gotta do it. But so they need someone to kind of help see through that mess.
I think it might have been you, Rob, I was talking to earlier, and we talked about that some artists at the start of their careers are a little bit too focused on emulating. They want to be the next something, and that's something that doesn't interest me in the slightest. I want unique, heartfelt, raw talent that's totally authentic.
That can be just a voice and a guitar. It
Absolutely, and so we've built a roster within our management company, within our label, within the publishing interest that we have, of people coming to us that we felt that from. We didn't ever go out and say, right, we've got to find a singer like Rihanna or a band like Led Zeppelin or another band like Linkin Park. That's not of interest to me. I want people who are doing their thing authentically. Yeah.
God, isn't there no better feeling than to hear something and it just takes you over and you just feel it in your gut?
Dopamine.
It's like, I know where this is going. I can feel what this can be.
Well, Javi, I want to ask you, because, you know, obviously you've recently been introduced to an Indonesian band, and it was never about, yes, I'll be your producer. There were so many questions you had that when I spoke to the band, it's like, wow, we just didn't expect those questions, because you are not just an engineer who's just going to say, come in and set up your gear and I'll get you a great sound. There were so many things about their culture, their personality. Explain a bit more about how you approach a new artist.
Yeah, I think for me, I do like 3 sort of stages in my work, and the first one, which is one of the most important things, to actually is understand the artist, and you really have to get to know them. You have to know where they're from, what they do, what they want to say, etc., because all those elements, even though perhaps they don't know yet, but all those elements are the elements that are going to make them unique. So in order to even design something in function of that, you have to understand them first. So for me, my first stage is always understanding them. Then is designing. So, okay, how are we going to do this? Obviously, there's implications on budget or locations or logistics or whatever you want to call it. But then you start planning how you're going to do it. And then, okay, let's create. But you have done all those stages already, which is, I think, like the foundations for any record that should be done nowadays, and regardless of the budgets or if it is a bedroom or what it is. And I think it's important to really go to the core essence of what the artist is, because that same artist in 2 years' time is going to be different. It's like you're almost like taking a photograph or trying to capture that moment in time for that artist. And hopefully it will move on, it will be something else. And the next time, even though if you work with that artist again, it will be different. But I think what we get quite a lot of pleasure from is the fact of having this craft that we do every year after year, and it's almost like a tradition. It's like we want to pass it on, because I was lucky enough that sometimes other people pass it on to me in good ways and bad ways as well. So it's important to understand that if you're going to be in this for the long term, it's almost like you kind of signed in the dotted line forever, and that's it, you know? You made your pact, and you have to understand the responsibility that comes with it. And it's important to understand that it's a craft that grows and grows and grows, and you can only get better with time. You get better as an engineer, better as a producer, better as an artist, if you truly believe that you can do that forever.
I think, you know, it's so important that, as Rob said about having a listening ear, that there's so many opportunities to maybe create that sort of opportunity to help young artists, just to have a moment where they can get that fresh set of ears from people that are professional, You know, so I think that's actually something worth considering moving forward. I want to open up to the floor now. We've got 10 minutes because it would be interesting to see if we've actually got any questions. So can we have a microphone down the front? Hello. Thank you very much. Raise your hand. Yes, there's someone at the back. Could you stand up as well, please? There's a microphone behind you. There you go. Question, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Miguel from the Philippines. And I have a question. Is there, because we've been talking about, ever since the sessions earlier, about authenticity, we've been hearing it a lot. And my question is, for example, for a band like from the Philippines, is there a universal or a global form of authenticity that, like, for example, a band from the Philippines can create something that many countries or many regions can appreciate this kind of music? And if so, what are the elements that define this?
Yeah.
I would like to hear your
Okay,
insights.
Rob, I want you to maybe consider that question.
I mean, you know, just humans, everything just crosses. Empathy, I mean, transcend countries and boundaries. I think it just shows up. I have to be honest. I think it's something that you can't plan for. It's something that you have, let's see if this still keeps going, something that just, it's just there. It's just, I mean, you know, I can't tell you that when I started working with Linkin Park, when I heard the demos, that they were going to be big around the world. No, I didn't know that I knew they were authentic. I knew that there was something about them, but I didn't know it was going to transcend boundaries. It just did. It became this universal language that was built into them as artists and the way they emoted that to fans.
So just to pick up on that, I think what made Linkin Park unique was the lyrical content, Chester's voice, and the entire sound of the band. It sort of captured a mood and a spirit that was in itself unique. If artists are copying or emulating or trying to fit into a genre, and there are so many people using the same sample packs that are available on Pro Tools and Logic, you're going to end up sounding like a Max Martin clone, and it's, you know, good though that may be, and a lot of fun it is to do as well in your bedroom. It's very gratifying to make a record that sounds a bit like a Max Martin track. It's not going to resonate with a record company guy who's looking for something different and unique. And the simplest way to be different and unique is to have a unique voice. And that's what I look out for first and foremost.
First, yeah. Javier, that question.
Yeah,
authenticity. You're from South America.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've traveled the world and you've moved out of a country to you know, establish yourself. But, you know, when it comes to authenticity.
Well, I'm actually done that route actually of my fair bit of like trying to be like somebody else. I was trying to do indie rock in a Latin American country, which we did pretty well, but I think our expectations were a bit wrong in the sense that we were in a very full Latin American salsa party country, and we were just like doing it on the wrong place. However, having said that, we did find a niche, and we became like a cult sort of band within that market. And I think as long as you're clear of what you really want to do and represent you as an artist, then just go down that route and keep exploring, because you can do rock and sing in English if you want, even if you're here, it doesn't matter. But as long as you're truthful, that's all what matters. But I think it's important just to try to be authentic in the sense of what is coming out of your words or the meaning of what you're trying to communicate. That's what it has to be original. And I think it's a very good point. Try not to use the same samples and things. It's better that you do a crappy recording, doesn't matter. But if there's an energy there, that's what you have to like use as a tool.
Try and avoid cliche in lyrics, because the same things get said over and over again in the same way. If you can find new ways to say things that are personal to you, then that's a great thing. I mean, Ed Sheeran tells stories that are very personal, and that obviously is connecting with the mass market because you automatically engage. Adele did the same. She told very intimate stories of her personal life, and that has communicated with us all as a global entity, and she found ways to say things in her way.
It's a very good question. We're going to come the man in the green at the back there in a minute who's going to ask a question. But just the other thing about the question, I think, is that you know, you're making a comment without even hearing these guys' music as well. This is the next thing, is to really understand true authenticity, is to not only hear you, is to see you as well. So, are you performing?
Yes, we actually have another show tomorrow.
Okay, right, well, maybe we'll get down. So,
You've already given me a CD.
already given you a CD, there we go.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, there's a gentleman behind you who wants to ask a question. Sir, would you like to ask a question?
I wanted to dovetail on the Linkin Park story, if I could, because I think one of the things that I witnessed over the years was they never wrote the same record twice. They never wrote the same songline twice. All of the lyrics were extremely authentic, and more importantly, they were real. It was storyline about struggle in your own brain. So one of the things that transcended boundaries is we all share those problems. We all have these conflicts in our brains. And they were able to wrap those stories around, hi there. They were able to wrap those stories around good music at the same time. So that authenticity, that connection with people around the world, because this story isn't localized. It's not about the Philippines, or it's not about, there's nothing wrong with that. But they told a story that applied across the globe, and they were brave enough to not write the same record twice. It was always a unique musical journey.
Jim, it's a very good point. Living in Asia for 21 years, a lot of people remind me that Asians love drama. Well, I've got a little bit of news to tell you. Actually, human beings love drama. I come from a country that is full of drama. We all know about drama. But Rob, would you like to add a comment on top of Mr. Digby there about what he said?
No, I mean, he's known him as, almost as long as I have. He gets it, But all I have to say is it was something that as kids, when I first met them, hearing the demos, those were there. It's not like something they added later. It's not like something they faked or made up to kind of keep their popularity. It was them. That was 100%. And you know what? That's the whole thing. Be who you are. It's okay to get a third-party opinion, and just, listen, but don't ever sacrifice who you are for a producer or anyone else. That's probably the most important thing, too.
There's a really great video on YouTube of David Bowie talking about exactly that.
Yes.
About individuality. It's easy to search for, I guess, if you do Bowie individuality or unique artist, you'll find it on YouTube, and he articulates it very well. Yeah.
Right, if you want to know...
That's a great example, though, because even people like Bowie, that you think, oh, he's a mega producer. I mean, he had his side wingman, Mick Ronson, doing all the guitars and everything, and most of the successful that he had, it was due to a really talented people next to him as well, or even when Bowie worked with Lou Reed. And
Brian Eno, yeah.
We're going to take two more questions. We're going to have to be very quick. So, gentlemen at the front here, I'm going to give you my microphone. Come a bit closer.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. Hi. My name is Michael. So, for me, I'm an aspiring music producer. So, I just want to ask each of you guys, in your opinion, what do you think makes a music producer a music producer?
Very good question, really.
It's a very good question. The quick reaction to that is someone who can empathize with an artist instantly and share their vision and capture it on virtual tape and make them sound the best that they can be, actually allow them to be who they are. And if you're able to add something to the party along the way, then that's great and stimulating. For George Martin's the best example of that, maybe back Beatles time. They wrote songs, he added arrangements and production ideas that actually made the sound of the Beatles. It was not a four-piece band by any means. So a producer can absolutely capture the essence of the band, but add to it as well. That's the best producer.
Javier, quick one. I mean, you during Song Hubs, you were in the room, and Edric was in front of the desk. You were, you were feeling the sound.
Yeah, it was really comfortable, actually. The fact of, I normally tend to produce an engineer most of the time because of tendencies and budgets, etc. But having someone there just to take care of the technical part of it was fantastic, because you can really focus on the moment of the essence of what we were doing as a song and writing together. And that's crucial. I mean, having someone that can either coach you or imply certain vision or channel you or showing you the way or direct you a bit, that's a really good good tool to have.
Well, 4, 3, 2, 1. we won't have time for any more questions. We're really sorry because we know you'd love to have a chance to speak to these guys. They're going to be around. We're going to take... Let's just hear it for these guys. Please, a round of applause for Rob, Chris, and Javier. Again, each session could be double the time that we've had today, but unfortunately, we just don't have that time. We're going to take a toilet break, okay? When I mean a toilet break, that's not go down to Marina Bay Sands or Marina Square and, toilet break, because the rest of this day is going to be pretty mind-blowing because we've got YouTube coming back, really helping you understand how to produce music videos, how to produce your stories. We've actually got YouTube themselves, who did an amazing session last year regarding how to really leverage from understanding how to YouTube as a platform. And the last session, oh my God, Lyor Cohen himself. So toilet break, 5 minutes. You know where the toilet is? And then we'll get straight back here and we'll start the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.